I do think New Zealand can take this because you've got an inexperienced guy at 13. In my opinion, 13 is the most important position defensively. You've got an inexperienced guy at 13. You've got an inexperienced guy at 13.
Athstat experience.
Hi, welcome back to another episode of the Benchmarkers Rugby Show. I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Kumbi, and I'm a data analyst, but I am also a rugby enthusiast. And I am joined by my other co-host, Nyasha. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, my name is Nyasha. I am a data scientist as well. But for this show, I am the numbers guy. I'm the AI guy. I do all the numbers analytics and, compare it against Kumbi's eye test since he's our resident expert.
Hey, yeah. I know I'm about to get cooked here, so it's it's not. All right. So the idea behind this show is that we want to provide the analytics, the data, because since analytics is starting to play a much bigger role in sports worldwide, but we also just want to bring the context to the numbers as well, so that hopefully we can appease fans who love the numbers and also enthusiasts and purists of the game as well. Yeah. So hopefully we can bring you content that does that. And yeah, hopefully you enjoy today's episode as well. So, right, another week. I think this was the last week of World Cup warm-up matches, which means this week, coming into the last weekend, there are no matches, but that means we're just getting closer to the World Cup, right? So the World Cup is next week. Obviously very excited. But we just want to start this episode off by just looking at the last weekend of games, right? So we had, I think, probably for me, one of the most exciting run of games I've seen in a very long time. Yeah. Fiji beat England for the first time. I think it was for the first time ever, or it was for the first time in Twickenham
I think it was ever.
Oh, right, okay, right.
Yeah.
And that was a really exciting game. Samoa came really close to beating Ireland in France, and also I think Georgia really competed against Scotland as well. They didn't manage to get the win, but I think seeing those tier 2 or teams that are on the fringe of tier 1 but are considered tier 2, seeing them compete to that level, I think it's really exciting to see close to the World Cup. And I think it's just a shame that they don't really get as much exposure and experience playing against these tier 1 countries more often. But I think it was a very exciting run of games. But I think the one thing that we just want to talk about is the game that we previewed in our previous episode, because so I think Nyashi, let's just remind us about how that Springboks versus All Black just turned out.
We're going to play a little clip of Kumbi's prediction, right? Kumbi's oddly specific prediction.
I do think New Zealand can take this because you've got an inexperienced guy at 13. In my opinion, 13 is the most important position defensively. Look, listen, I don't think this is fair.
What do you mean it's not fair? You singled out their forward pack, right? You said the forward pack is going to cancel the forward packs will cancel each other out.
Right. I did say that.
Obviously, that didn't happen, and you singled out number 13. Right,
Moody had a great game.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. You singled them out. You said, and I quote, they have an inexperienced number 13, right? And basically for that reason, they'll lose. And this man went on to have the game of his life. So as our expert, I mean, it was a great game, but as our expert, would you like to make a post-show comment?
Yeah, listen. It feels like I'm every week we have to start with an apology and me explaining myself before we get into more of the rugby. But listen, technically, okay, first things first, right? Right. We did say, listen, the numbers said 25. We had a 75% chance of winning. Like I've said in previous episodes, I have nothing to do with those numbers, right? So I wasn't the only person who was wrong. That's the first thing, right? But I think the second thing is the fact that yes, I was wrong in specifying that, Kane Moody would have a bad game. But I think that was under the assumption that New Zealand forward pack would level up against that Springbok pack.
Yep.
Which obviously didn't happen. But I think the one thing, I'm just going to focus on the part where I got right, that in last week's video, right?
We'll allow it.
Yeah, right. What I did mention is, like, we specified APIs for the All Blacks for the Springboks, and one thing that we mentioned for the All Blacks that they needed to get right, because obviously the APIs also specified defenders beaten and all that, but we focused on set piece and like because if you want to beat the Springboks, you have to have your forward pack has to basically drive you forward. First few minutes of the game, they had a penalty at scrum time, and then after that, they just basically had penalties at the maul, again and again. Then discipline fouled, so basically it crumbled, after that. So, and they had a terrible line out. So essentially, I think where we were right was to point out the fact that if the All Blacks want to win, if you look at their track record up until 2022, their set piece was wrong. Basically, it basically was nowhere to be seen. After bringing Jason Ryan, the Crusaders forwards coach, that's when the Mole defense improved, their scrum improved significantly. And I think, listen, the one thing that I always believe that, I believe in things going wrong at the right time. Okay. Right, I think ever since they lost that first game in South Africa last year, they've had really good performances from their forward pack. They drove them forward, and because of that, their backline could be as innovative as possible. And they haven't lost a game since then. Right, I think they drew one game to England, but they haven't lost any games since then, since last year. Right, but I think this game was a good wake up call to say, okay, listen, if you don't get your discipline correct, if your timing is wrong on the maul, if your lineouts aren't going right, if your scrum isn't going right, you're going to lose the game. And I think, All Blacks are like an exciting team to watch and all that, I think historically even speaking. Yeah. But you can't just pitch up to a game and just start, throwing the ball around. If your forward pack isn't performing well, like then we can't even, because I don't even remember Jody Barrett, Rico Ioane doing anything in the game. But because the Springboks were so much more dominant, Andre Esterhuizen had a really good game. And also Kenan Moody also, that's why he had a very good game. So technically I wasn't wrong. Yeah, but also just to also point out that thing, what I mentioned about getting things wrong at the right time. I also just want to then talk about my performer of the game for that. Well, I mean the forwards, but then I also want to point out Manie Libbok, because in that game, previously we talked about the conversions and all that stuff because he had missed, crucial conversions. Well, they weren't crucial, but he had missed quite a few conversions the last two games. Yeah. In this game, not only did he have a very good kicking game in hand, kicking to touch, but he also did not miss a single conversion. Right, so I think it's really good to just have bad performances out there because you're going to have bad performances. That's going to happen. Yeah. But if you had bad performances at the right time, I think that's really good. You learn your lessons, and then when you start the World Cup, you can adjust. So I don't think the All Blacks should really, be. I think the Springboks, everyone, even me, I'm thinking, okay, maybe they might just be favourites here because their forward pack is that much more dominant than everyone else's. But I don't think if you're the All Blacks, you're looking at this game and you're worried necessarily. I think because we've seen that they can get things right after getting things wrong. Yeah. But look, I wouldn't be worried personally. Yeah, that's how that game turned out.
Okay, cool. I mean, listen, you brought some good points. And
I prepared. I came prepared.
Yeah, I'm sure immediately after the game you're like, okay, you know what, right?
This is where I was right. Down.
Right, just looking at our post game report that we prepared and just analyzing key areas. Yeah, you're right. If we look at the set pieces, right, because that's something you really touched on. I mean, South Africa had 10 scrums with an 80% success rate. New Zealand had 9 scrums with an 89% success rate, right? Yeah. So, right. And then lineouts, the lineout success, that's where there's a huge difference. With South Africa 88% and New Zealand 67%. Now again, that's
terrible lineout.
Yeah, and that's really, really out of character. But also, it also goes to show how well South Africa is doing, right? Yeah. So I mean, just looking at a lot of the KPIs that I guess are brought out post game. The kicking game, amazing, and I'm so glad it was good because remember, I think it was in the last episode, the one before that, we were concerned about the kicking, and you rightfully said, bad games happen, right? And as long as they get it right and the right to the right time, and clearly they did. 5 out of 5 five out of five. 47% possession for South Africa, and 48% territory. So New Zealand dominated possession and territory, which I guess they just couldn't convert. But with such a big loss, man. With their biggest loss ever. With their biggest loss ever.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, if you're feeling encouraged, the World Cup.
I'm not really feeling encouraged, but I'm not feeling discouraged either. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and if I were to give you some positives, New Zealand had more defenders beaten, right? They had 39 to South Africa's 19, right?
Yeah.
More rucks, 92 to South Africa's 51. More rucks won, 88 to South Africa's 49. So actually, looking at this, you'd actually think New Zealand won. They had more runs, fewer kicks from hand, but and fewer meters covered. So, it just goes to show the efficiency of what South Africa was doing.
Right. Yeah. I think just to close that out, it's just the fact that if you're not, all those defenders beaten, they're meaningless if your forward pack is getting dominated. Really, that's the reason why New Zealand lost. So it's just the fact that now, because the Springboks 1-8, and then because they have their bomb squad 16 to 21. Those forwards, you have to be able to match up to world class forwards from minute 1 to minute 80. So if the other three, when I say other three, I really just mean the top three, because I've in my head I've kind of counted out, which is unfair. I've unfairly counted out other teams, but I think if you need to beat the Springboks, you really have to match up to that forward pack. That's just, you can't get away from that. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if other teams can match up to their pack.
South Africa's bench was mostly forwards, right?
I think they just had one backline player.
So clearly that's their plan,
Right.
But then also the guys did need game time. Ultimately it was still a warm up game, but it didn't feel like it. So moving on. All the analysis you've seen is powered by Athstat Marketplace, the best marketplace to get your digital memorabilia directly from teams, athletes, and brands. If you're a sports fan or an athlete, visit athstatmarketplace.io and start creating and sharing memories. Link in the description.
All right, I think one more thing that we also just need to consider is the fact that it's just how many suspensions, yellow cards, and all these things, because it looks like discipline is going to be quite a bit of a factor, as it always is at World Cups, really, because TMO starts to play a bigger role, and refs are just a little bit more strict. But also, so suspensions, and just basically people going off the field for yellow cards and whatnot. But also injuries as well. We're even before the World Cup, we've already seen some critical injuries to most teams, really. So what we've just decided to do is we wanted to look at the winning models for each team, right? So not every single team, because obviously we don't want to make these videos too long. But wanted to see what the winning models for each team would be, so that we can see what the effect of injuries, suspensions, and so on, just basically player absence, would be for each team, right? And because we're not looking at every team, we've gone and we've looked at the top 4 teams. Just basically because there's such a gap between the top 4 and everyone else, and there's so much that's been made of the top 4 teams being on one side, and their dominance, especially over the last year or so, over the other teams in Group C and D. So we've looked at the winning models for these teams, and we just want to see what the effect of basically losing players in different positions would be. Right. So we're basically going to start with, but also actually because I'm a little bit biased, and I'm excited by what I'm seeing from Fiji. I've also slipped Fiji into the analysis as well, just so that we can also have some team outside that top 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with Ireland, since they're at the top, and then we're going to go from the top rated team, going down in that order. All right. So Nyasha, do you want to present the winning model for Ireland?
Yeah. So just for context, what a winning model is we look at all the KPIs for their last for all their games, pretty much, I guess, from 2020, right? Look at all their games. The AI model picks out the important features when they win, right? So these are the things that make them win. Obviously, we're looking at over 100 KPIs and we can't present them all. So in this particular case, we only look at, at 6 because these have been identified as the most important. But again, we can't really display 20, 30, 50 KPIs. Right? Now, starting off with Ireland. Right, the KPIs that were outlined were the line breaks, their offloads, defenders beaten, passes, line out success, and their scrum success. With their average scrum success being 90%, line out success 85%, and the average defenders beaten being 20 defenders beaten, which is actually quite a high number. So yeah. Kumbi, what does this say about how they play and specifically their injuries? Will their injuries affect these KPIs?
I think the thing is, obviously with these, it all depends who gets injured, and also it depends on your depth at that particular position, right? And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, pointing out the first thing. Offloads, defenders beaten, all these things and passes always come from line-out success and scrum success, your set piece. So who are the drivers of the set piece? I think if anyone in your tight five, anyone from your props, hookers and locks gets injured for Ireland, and for most of the basically for every team here. But I think in this case, Ireland's already lost their, Cian Healy and also Dan Sheehan. So Cian Healy doesn't really start, but I think because you're in a group against South Africa where you still have to nullify that bomb squad that's going to be coming in, that's a critical injury, right? And then you also lose who I think is the top 2 hooker in the world. I think Malcolm Marx is the best hooker, but I think Dan Sheehan is number 2. Losing him, I think that's also critical because your line out also gets affected there, right? But then also once you then go from that platform, from your line out and your scrum, you're also then looking at those who are the drivers of those breaks and all these things. And I think that would be someone like Jonathan Sexton, right? So even Jonathan Sexton has missed some games, and you could say that maybe they were affected. They do have cover at 10. But I think the gap between number 10 and the Jonathan Sexton and everyone that's coming after that is quite massive. So because they've already had injuries at those positions, and because Sexton was suspended, but I think he's also injury prone. I think if you look at a guy like Sexton, you're thinking, okay, we really are crossing our fingers here to make sure that he doesn't get injured. But essentially, tight five and also those drivers of your back line. I think at centre they're good. Wing, I think they've got quite a bit of depth. So, but those positions, I think those are the most critical ones for Ireland going forward, in my opinion.
Okay, and next on the list is South Africa. Now we did cover South Africa with their winning model last episode, so we'll just maybe breeze through this. But the KPIs that they have are line breaks, defenders beaten, offloads, ruck success, territory, and passes. Right. Yeah. Interesting scrums aren't here.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. Yeah.
Yeah, but hey, the model picks these out. But yeah. What are your?
I mean, look, we all know South Africa relies on their forwards. But what I do, so from scrums, the one thing that you can focus on is territory, because when they dominate the other forward pack, their territory, because they tend to stifle the opposition, and because of that they can get penalties, and then they can run their line outs and whatnot. So territory is a massive one. But then I do think, so I'm going to repeat myself from last week, right? And I know I got cooked for this at the beginning, but I'm going to repeat myself here. Yeah. If a team can nullify the effect of South Africa's forward pack, you then need the back wall, or at least not even nullify it. Like if they can just match what they do, right, for 80 minutes. If there's a team, if it's possible, right, then you're going to rely on the excitement of your back line, right? So I think that's where you've got guys like Manny Lebok and a guy like Damian Willemse, who I think they're exciting. Vileru is also one of their playmakers. I think they also rely on him as well. But I do think a guy so there's 2 injuries that we've had so far, Henry Pollard and Lucanio Am. Yeah. So the reason why I'm also actually talking, let me just clarify, the reason why I'm talking about backline players is because I think their forward pack, there's so much depth there. I don't think injuries there, I don't really see a lot of positions where an injury, there's not someone who can match that little level of quality. So I think they've got quite a bit of depth at the forward pack.
True.
But looking at positions like 10, 13, I've mentioned that 13 is the most important position. I actually meant most important position in the back line.
Okay,
I think if you've got a guy, if Lucanio Arm is missing, if Andre Pollard is missing, I think they miss two, not only drivers of the game, but you miss guys who are experienced, who can, who are experienced, consistent, and they can then give you these other KPIs consistently. So I do believe that those positions are critical, and they'll want Andre Pollard in that team, and also possibly Lucanio Arm as well. So I do think those positions are critical, and also Vili Leroux, because I think he's also gives second option for playmaker. So they also do need him in the starting 23 as well, whether it's on the bench or starting, wherever that is. So yeah, that's South Africa. Yeah. Okay. So yeah.
Right. And next you have newly number 3 on the list, France. All right. So France's winning model. Again, one thing I do enjoy is that the model does pick out different KPIs per team.
Yeah.
Right. So looking at France, it's line breaks. I guess that's been a common one. Passes. Yeah. Offloads, possession, tackle success, and rucks. Right. With their 63 rucks on average. Their possession 43% on average. And line breaks, 6 line breaks. I don't know why I assumed it was higher, but yes, those are the KPIs for France.
Yeah. So I think here in this case, you've got at least. If I'm comparing the 4 teams, if I were to, I know maybe New Zealand might be the 4th when it comes to scrums and all, but I think France, especially after losing Cyril by. I think scrum. I mean, France might have the weakest scrum in that top 4. But what I do think they rely on is quick ball, right? So quick ball, good kicking game, and broken attack, right? So they can attack you from anywhere. They've got 2 kicking from your 9, and then they've got their 2 explosive wingers. Basically, they can break you apart from any position in the on the field, which is what I think this is. This is basically the stats. The winning model is basically saying. It's basically saying France. It's French flair essentially. But now the question is, who are the drivers of that French flair, right? So I think you still need a good scrum. You still need a good line out. You can't, like we said, we can't really get away from that. Yeah. They've already lost their starting prop. I think within the tight 5, they don't want to lose another guy. Like I think their best tight 5 player is Flamand. Right, I think they're number 5.
Hey, pronunciation. Look at you.
You've been spending some time on Duolingo.
Look at you. That was so smooth.
Right. Yeah. So I think tight 5 is critical, but I think when you also look at other positions, like one of their hard workers is going to be Audrey. They don't want to lose Audrey. And then from Antoine Dupont, I think, yes, they've really lost Roman Tamak, but I think Jalibert is also like a very good replacement, especially when it comes to running ball in hand and a running game. I think he's a very good replacement for them. But I think, look, it's not a surprise to say Antoine Dupont is the most critical loss here, because I think he drives that game. He's that connector. Whether it's from his kicking game, make sure that the ball bounces, and then from there they can set up a ruck, put pressure on the opposition, and then they basically break up the team using that kicking game. And then also their finishers, Damien Panot and also Villiers, those 2. But I do think they've got depth at the winger position. So because like I mentioned, it's all because of the specific player, but also the depth. I do think Antoine Dupont is going to be your most critical, but also but in other positions they're not going to want to lose other players, of course in those positions as well. But number 9 is going to be the most critical for France, in my opinion.
Okay. We know how your predictions go, but so moving on to New Zealand, right?
Right.
So their key KPIs are line breaks, defenders beaten, line out success, which again we've already spoken about, passes, offloads, and tackle success. And here their line out success normally when they win is at 86%, but obviously just looking at our initial analysis, they were at 67% against the Springboks. Right? Yeah. And again, so when they lose in their key KPIs, it lowers their chances of winning. So anyway, as we get into the how injuries would affect this.
I think, like we mentioned, in this case, I don't really think we need to spend all that much time on New Zealand because we've already mentioned the fact that it's going to be critical, their forward pack, especially at lock because Bodie Italic is already injured. I think it just came out before we started recording that Scott Barrett is going to play, but I think lock is going to be your most critical. They've got depth at prop, but also hooker. If I don't think outside of the what they have in their squad right now, the other hookers have experience or the ability to throw that well. So I think it's line out and scrum. I think that's the most important thing. But then the one thing that I'll point, because I'm backline, they'll do what they do. So I'll just focus on the forward. I think that the forwards, the most critical one is going to be 6. If Shannon Frizzell, he's not going to play against France, but I think they do need someone who can break open the game. A 6 who's big enough to be a wrecking ball, but also a line out option. I think he does improve what they do at the line out. So I think for New Zealand, it's essentially those fundamentals. Their forward pack, but also their kicking game as well. So Aaron Smith is going to be quite critical for New Zealand. So I think, 6 and 9 are most, and also probably lock as well. Those are the most critical ones. So that's New Zealand.
Okay, and then your dog horse.
Team.
Yes. Right, we have Fiji. Now looking at Fiji,
the flying Fijians.
Exactly. We have tackle success, scrum success, ruck success, line out success, line breaks, and scrums won. This is a very interesting combination. This is actually a combination I'd expect. I was expecting more for the top. Yeah, but where they win scrum success is at 90%. Their line out success, their ruck success at 97%, which is very high. Lower line breaks, like you saw for, I think it was Ireland, it was 9, but here for their line breaks are 4. Scrums 1 on average 4. So with your favorite team, right, your dog horse, the team you're putting your money on to win the World Cup.
Hey, just slow down. Because now you're going to be clipping these videos and putting them on
what are your thoughts?
So I think the thing is with Fiji's always been an exciting team to watch, but I think the thing that they've gotten right, especially being because they've got a lot of players who play in Europe, and then there's the Fijian draw, who was a team that was introduced into Super Rugby recently. I think the thing that they've gotten right is their set piece, right? So that's what we're seeing here with the data.
Yeah.
If these teams in the tier 2 can get their scrums right, they can get their lineouts right, and then together with that excitement that they provide, I think they can, they can really pose some threats at the Rugby World Cup. So I think that's what we're seeing here. So yes, you've got some exciting players like I'm spacing on their number 12's name, Semiran Brandra. You also have their captain Waithalevu, I think, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
So we have to get you on the Fijian Duolingo.
Right.
Just so that it's as smooth as your French, but yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah, me too. Yeah, the Fijian has a long way to go, but yeah. So obviously they've got some exciting backline players and so on. But then I do think that in their forward pack as well, they also do need, I think, players like Tangi Valu, right? Who I think in the last game he had about 16 tackles with 1 missed tackle. I think those fundamentals, you need those, like making sure that you nail your scrums. I think Luke Tangi, their number 3, he's also very critical. So they've got really good performance in their forward pack. So I think those ones are going to be critical to ensure that they don't get suspended, they don't get injured. So I think their forward pack, they just need to keep their forward pack intact. Because what I'm seeing from their forward pack, their scrums, their lineouts, and also defensively, I think that's looking really good. Also because in their group, the other team that they're going to be facing, Wales and Australia, they're getting things wrong in these areas as well, right? So I think there's a really nice opportunity for them to make it to the quarterfinals. Not World Cup champions. Yeah, let's just clarify. But I'm really hoping that they can make it to the semi-finals. Right. So I'm really excited to see what Fiji can do here.
Okay. Well, I guess so that at the risk of getting clipped myself, I would have them beating Australia if I'm to be completely honest. I would as well. Yeah. Oh, look at You want us both to get clipped?
Yeah, I mean, I'm used to it, but this is what I do.
All right. Okay. Cool. So thank you for that. Yeah. So of course, it's I guess a little bit of a longer video, but we're just analyzing the winning models of each team, just how injuries can affect their KPIs. Because if they're losing these KPIs, their chances of winning decreases drastically.
100%.
Yeah, but yeah, Kumbi, thanks for that analysis. This is why you're the expert. And yeah, from my side, I don't know if you have any closing words.
No, I think obviously next week is going to be the final week leading up to the Rugby World Cup. So that's going to be quite exciting, just predicting how that's going to turn out. But yeah, as always, thank you so much for to the audience for watching, and just don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, I would always appreciate that feedback from our audience. So yeah, thank you again for watching,
side, thank you.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
Yeah. Okay. Cheers.
All right. Cheers.
Athstat experience.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that was quite long.
It was.